Hi, Assemblywoman Nancy Munoz. Thank you for joining us, the Kane University Government Affairs and Community Partnerships team, on our Women's History Month podcast. We are doing these calls with our women legislators from across the state just to hear their experience as legislators, hear how they got into politics, and hear their voice on encouraging upcoming legislators, hear how they're here, why they're here, and just a little piece about who they are. So we're going to start with what district you represent, and then what inspired you to run for office, and what was the moment that solidified your decision to enter.
Well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me. So I represent Legislative District 21, I live in Summit. So there are 7 towns in Union County, 7 towns in Somerset County, 3 towns in Morris County, and 2 towns in Middlesex County. So I represent 19 towns altogether. You take the state and divide by 40. Whether you represent Newark as one city as your district, or cumulatively, we all add up to about the same number of people we represent. Just a lot more traveling when you have a lot more towns.
Yes. So what inspired you to run for office, and what was the moment that solidified your decision to enter politics?
Well, I was always involved. I have 5 children who were in the Summit Public Schools. I was married to a trauma surgeon who was at University Hospital in Newark, very busy, and I was very involved in the PTAs and in all the town activities. My husband was on the city council of Summit, and then in 2001 was elected to the Assembly. He was a surgeon and understood the connection between the state politics, being in the Assembly, and the connection to the delivery of health care. Unfortunately, on March 30th of 2009, he had a sudden death, and he unfortunately passed away that day. But I had always been involved because, as a full-time trauma surgeon at the only public hospital in the state and a level 1 trauma center, he had to stay in-house when he was on call because he was saving lives. So I would go with him or for him if he wasn't able to. So I was very involved with him, and obviously a lot of discussion during the family time. And so when he had that death, I decided to run for his office, and I was elected for my first term. He died on March 30th, which will be 16 years at the end of this month, and I was sworn in on May 21st. So I've been in now for nearly 16 years. Love what I'm doing because of the impact that I can have on so many lives in so many different ways that you don't even expect.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry to hear about your husband, but
Yeah,
it
thank you.
sounds like
He was a great guy. It's actually the Eric Munoz Trauma Center is named for my husband. My husband was Eric Munoz. So because he had been the chief medical officer there, and then a professor at the medical school, and an active trauma surgeon, and really worked to build up the trauma center to what it is today. And so they renamed it the Eric Munoz Trauma Center, of which I'm very proud.
Absolutely. You should be. You
Yeah,
should
I am.
be.
Yeah.
So in a way, in his death, there's life.
Exactly.
Yes.
And you never know. What was that saying? But you close a window, you open another one. And, it really, it's sad, and I'm always sad, especially in March on the
Yeah.
anniversary. But that being said, I think he'd be very proud of me. I know he'd be very proud of me.
Yes. You definitely are doing good work. Well, with that, can you share some of the biggest challenges you faced as a woman running for office and how you've overcome them?
I think probably one of the biggest challenges that I, as a woman, face is probably fundraising, honestly. It's like very difficult. I'm a nurse by profession, as you know. I think certain professions are there, it's easier to raise money, i.e., if you're a lawyer, there's a lot of people who have connections to you through the government. So being a nurse and not used to asking people for money, I think one of the biggest challenges that I feel that I face is that. I think it's harder for women to ask for money in general, because we have to realize that we're not asking for the money for us, but for the money to empower us to do our jobs. And unfortunately, the reality is that we definitely need to raise money in order to get reelected, because, it's just the reality of the situation. You have to run a campaign. We run every 2 years, which means that as soon as you get elected, you're thinking about the
You're
next
back in it
election.
again. Yep.
Yeah, and it's a constant cycle. So that, to me, is one of the more difficult things. As a mother of 5 kids, I have to say, when I got into this, my youngest was 15. So it's hard for a parent, especially I was an only parent now because my husband had passed away. One was in medical school, 2 were in college, 1 was in high school, 1 had just graduated from college. But to manage, so my youngest son kind of lost his father and his mother, because
Mm.
the hours are really, really much different than what people expect. There's a lot of evening work. Most people are settling in for the evening they come home from work, they're settling in. We come in and then we get up and
You're
go out
headed
again.
right back out.
Right.
Right.
So that's difficult. I think if you're managing a younger family, unless you have the adequate supports for that. Like I said, my son did very well. He's now a fourth year surgical resident at University Hospital in Newark. So
Awesome.
it was hard for him when I first got elected because, like I said, he lost his father and then I wasn't around as much.
Okay, so that leads me to a follow-up question then. How do you balance the demands of public service with personal and family life, and what keeps you motivated to continue doing this doing
I think number one, the family does come first, and people have to realize that. Our schedule tends to, like, I was in Trenton today as a Thursday, so we go Mondays and Thursdays. I'm the budget officer, so then we go Mondays and Wednesdays. But you almost always, and we like to keep like a Friday free. We can have events on Saturday, but not the whole day on Saturday. So you block out the time. Like today is my grandson's third birthday. Yeah, and he
Hey.
lives in Connecticut, so I will be going up there on Sunday to celebrate his birthday. Because, again, I can't go today. Well, his parents work anyway, but the whole point is you make sure you block out the time for your family. And, if your children understand that you're doing it for the right reason, like they know I'm very principled and they know I'm committed to the people of the state of New Jersey, that makes it easier. But again, my youngest was 15. That also helped.
Right. Doubling back to your answer to my previous question about obstacles, I have to say I interviewed Assemblywoman Sumter on Monday, and her answer to that question was the same answer:
Is that right?
fundraising.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because women bring so much to the table, and money should not be the thing that stops us from sitting at the table.
I totally agree.
It should
And if you
not
don't
be
have
the
what's the
thing.
saying? If you don't have a seat at the table, they're gonna eat your lunch or something. You're not you certainly aren't part of the conversation.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. You're
yeah.
definitely not a part of the conversation if you're not at
And
the
I know
table.
you're gonna ask the question, but, having a woman's perspective is really important because I know I cue people up really
You
well.
got me. That was my next
I did that when I
question.
was meeting with another group. He kept saying to me, "You keep queuing me up." I'm like, "I know." But I think it's really do have a different perspective.
Mhm.
A, because we are even if we don't have children, but we are mothers oftentimes and daughters, and so even if we don't have children, we have mothers and family who depend on us. So, and we bring a different perspective, and I also think that as a nurse, I bring a really, really good perspective to this job because, like, I was on health committee today, and I bring a wealth of knowledge over the number of years that I've been in there I'm the only nurse in the legislature. And
Mm.
today we had a bill and, because I do my licensing stuff, I do a lot of research and education. Um, but it's part of what I do. Nurses should be and are lifelong learners. So,
Correct.
I bring a perspective of having worked in the healthcare profession to my job. That's not exclusive to female nurses, but I just
Correct.
happen to be a female nurse.
Right. Awesome. You did tee me up.
I just I teed you up.
You did tee me up. What advice would you give to a young woman who is interested in pursuing a career in public service?
Well, I was thinking about lots of women wait to be asked. What I think is don't wait to be asked. Like lots of women who I know have gotten involved about a particular issue that really made them really fired up.
Mhm.
Some people it's the general politics, but for
Mhm.
many, many women, it's a particular issue, whether it's a underfunding of your school system or whatever it is that gets them fired up. And then they realize that they really can make a huge difference. So don't wait to be asked is what I would say. My other advice to people is really, and I do this all the time, is read the newspaper. Know what's going on. And people will say, well, you really can't get like unbiased information. Well, if you read all of it, you can get a really good perspective. Like
Mhm.
I make a point of reading the newspaper every day and I'm aware of what's going on. And I really think that's important because then you can really have a sense of what's important in your community, what may be important in your state and to your constituents.
I love it. Can you talk about a mentor or role model? who
Yeah.
influenced your political journey? How has that person shaped your leadership style?
Well, I would say my personal mentor was my mother, who was she was born in 1927, which means that her family, they always had a job, but she lived through the Depression, but she also lived for the 4 years during World War II. And she was a U.S. Cadet Corps nurse. So, yeah, so during World War II, the U.S. American nurses, many of them went over to Europe because of the war. So there was this massive shortage of nurses in the United States. So the Congress developed the U.S. Cadet Corps nurses, and they actually changed the face of nursing education, because before that there was like a whole different array of way nurses could become nurses, but not a consistency to it. So that being said, she was like a really strong, determined woman who was always, you know, I'm one of five daughters, so she raised five strong daughters. But politics, I mean, I hate to give it credit to a man, but it was my husband. I learned from him to really listen to others and to be reasonable in my approach to everything. He had an unbelievable capacity. And I think he was a surgeon, I was a nurse. We are used to listening, getting intake from others, asking the right questions, getting the information, using that information to process, and then to make a decision based on that. That's just inherent in the profession in which we are both employed, or were both employed, because he's no longer with us.
What would you then say is one of your proudest accomplishments during your time in the legislature?
I have a couple of, I mean, I'm in the minority party, so it's a
Hmm.
whole lot harder to get bills passed. Many of the bills that have gone through that I could say were my bills to begin with, but the other party took the bills. But one thing that I'm extremely proud of, there's a couple, is that I was the prime sponsor of the bill to ban underage marriages in New Jersey.
I saw
We
that.
were the first state to pass the bill. Governor Christie vetoed it, but I got it reintroduced and repassed within the first couple of months of the Murphy administration. So we ended up being the second state in the nation, because I worked with a group called Unchained at Last, and they talked about these young girls who were being forced into these marriages, some as young as 13 to 15 years old. I mean, I met a woman from Florida, and she was there with her daughter. They were 10 years difference in age.
The mother,
The mother was 10 years old. So in other words, what happened, I asked her, how could that be? She was from Florida. Her minister at her church raped her, and she became pregnant at 9.5, delivered the baby at 10. And her mother made her marry the man so she wouldn't get the minister in trouble. Now, and then what happens is if you're a minor, you can't get divorced because
mhm,
you're not an adult. So the thing I'm most proud of is that I banned that in New Jersey, because we still had judges that were allowing young
right.
girls to be married. Like, one of my colleagues said he was the mayor of a town, and he was asked to go do a marriage. And he walked in, and it was like a 15-year-old who was being asked to marry an adult so he could get his green card. And he said to his wife, "That's it. I'm done. No more. I'm not doing this." So I made it a point, because these girls are being coerced into marriages. They're mostly girls outside of their control. It was occurring, the group that started it, they were seeing it in the Orthodox communities, that for
Mm,
religious reasons. But an 18-year-old can't buy a lottery
right.
ticket, I mean. She can't, you can't sign a contract. All of the statistics show that those young marriages, they don't continue their education. They tend to live in poverty. So that I got done, and I was very pleased about that. I was the prime sponsor on the bill for the interlocking ignition device for people who their first DUI was greater than twice the BAC, the blood alcohol content of the blood breathalyzer test. I've done I'm proud of quite a few things that I've done, but I would have to say, if I had to pinpoint it, it would be the underage marriage.
And I think that is a good one to pinpoint,
Yeah,
an excellent one to
yeah.
pinpoint. And lastly, what is a word of advice that you would leave for a young lady who is looking to come along and follow in your shoes and one day be in the legislature?
Has to be one word. Determination.
Or words of
Okay,
advice.
determination and conviction, belief in your principles, and stick to it. Don't let anybody like try to make you go off of your moral compass.
Mm,
Like, I don't have any other job in the state of New Jersey besides this. So I don't have any children employed in the state of New Jersey or any relatives. So I feel that nobody can influence me in the wrong way.
in
So
the
what
wrong.
I'm saying is this: believe in what you believe in, be true to your beliefs, and stick to it. You may get pushback. And I said to somebody recently who I don't think agreed with something that I voted on, I said, you can agree with me 98% of the time, but even if you don't agree with me for that 2%, you still agree with me 98. So work toward, sticking to your principles, having a high level of energy. I'm a grandmother and I have a tremendous amount of energy. And I think you need it for this job. You really need energy. You need determination. You need stick-to-itiveness, um, and sticking to your principles.
Absolutely. Well, Assemblywoman Munoz, we appreciate your time. We are so happy that you were able to join us
You're
today.
so pleasant.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We hope to have you on something with us again at Kane. We hope to see you around Kane. And thank you again for your time.